The story begins with an American family arriving in Kenya to go on a safari. The father's name is Jack, and he does not hide how much he hates all of this from the start, as he prefers less exciting outings. His wife is Lauren, a very calm woman who loves animals. Noah is their son, and Zoe is his older sister, Lauren's daughter, with her deceased first husband. The fifth member of the group is Billy, Zoe's boyfriend. When the plane lands, Noah starts recording a video, showing the landscape to his boyfriend, Sam. At the reception, an armed man tells Jack to wait a moment as a vehicle is arriving. A man named Mitch explains that this is the Lioness Squad, a unit combating illegal poaching that is made up entirely of women. They are transporting captured criminals, and Mitch says that those men are even lucky, as the Lioness Squad doesn't always bother to bring them back alive. Lauren is shocked to hear him speak of executions in such a trivial tone, but Zoe is filled with admiration for these women and says the hunters got what they deserved. Then Mitch introduces his friend Charlie and explains that they are in Kenya as volunteers. They ask about Jack's profession, and he says he works for an oil company. The conversation ends when the valet arrives with the vehicle the family rented, and Jack says it doesn't look anything like what he chose. However, on the way, he starts to feel a bit excited when some zebras appear. The lodge staff welcomes the family with great hospitality, and the couple's chalet is quite cozy. Jack is satisfied but insists on mentioning that this is the least expected for the price he paid. The first thing Lauren does upon arriving in the room is to administer insulin, as she has diabetes and needs constant injections. In the other room, Zoe is furious to discover that she won't be alone with her boyfriend, as Jack only booked one extra room. Noah also dislikes the idea but doesn't get as angry as his sister, and even says she should call Jack Dad again. The truth is that Zoe's relationship with her stepfather has been more tense since she revealed her plans not to go to college. Jack thinks this was bad influence from Billy, but Lauren does not see it the same way, reminding her husband that she herself studied medicine and no longer works in that field. Jack's mood remains terrible, and she suspects he is hiding some problem from her, especially since he doesn't leave his cell phone. A message arrives just as Jack is in the shower, and she can't resist the curiosity. Outside, Zoe and Billy get excited when they find some sage branches and explain to Noah that it has many recreational properties. He declines the offer and becomes a little worried when he sees his sister eating the leaves, as they are far from any hospital. When Jack comes out of the shower, he is immediately bombarded by Lauren's questions. She has just discovered that he is suspended without pay due to an oil spill under his supervision. That's why he is so stressed and keeps recounting every penny spent on this trip. At night, Zoe and Billy enjoy the sage buzz while Noah trains with Jack. Still disturbed by the fight with Lauren, Jack takes it out on the boy and starts picking at his relationship with Sam, using the excuse that it disrupts his focus. Noah is almost losing patience when they both hear a scream nearby and notice a general commotion. One of the guests explains that a hyena just passed by and is hiding behind the trees. Soon, a lodge staff member appears and explains that the hyena is harmless when it is alone and lost. The situation is completely different when there is a pack of them, as in that case, they can even kill a lion. After that, the outdoor party begins, and the family spends the night dancing and singing. The next day, they speak with an employee named Lucas and explain that they are ready for the safari. Lucas seems a little anxious to hear this and asks to speak with Jack privately. The problem is, Jack canceled everything possible to reduce travel expenses, and one of those things was precisely the safari, which is not included in their package. Lucas says there is an option to pay for the trip separately, but when he tells the amount, Jack announces to the family that they will do the safari on their own. Lauren and Noah become a little apprehensive about the idea of continuing without a professional guide, but they end up agreeing when they see him so excited for the first time since they arrived. Everyone gets into the van, and Jack takes them to the entrance of Amboseli National Park, where a group of people is being searched. Zoe asks if those are also illegal hunters, but this time no one knows the answer. Jack is becoming increasingly irritated at the delay in being cleared, and to make matters worse, Lauren is taking this time to buy souvenirs from the street vendors. When one of the detained men tries to run away, Jack decides to take advantage of the confusion and steps on the gas, crossing the gates without authorization and, more importantly, without paying. Ironically, this seems to regain a little of Zoe's respect, and even Billy applauds him. However, all this excitement starts to fade after several kilometers without spotting any kind of animal. Lauren is eager to see a rhinoceros, and now Jack is starting to like his new challenging and adventurous lifestyle. Therefore, seeing a sign prohibiting passage, Jack decides to ignore it and explore the so-called forbidden area. It doesn't take long before Billy lets out a scream and points out the window. There is an animal hanging from a tree branch, which seems to be an antelope or something like that. Zoe is disappointed because she was expecting a living creature, but soon becomes intrigued by it, wanting to know how it got there. Noah takes advantage of the general atmosphere of rebellion and asks to drive a little. Jack starts mumbling something about insurance, but Lauren convinces him to let the boy try and takes the opportunity to administer her insulin. Everyone complains when he suddenly brakes, but then they discover it was because of a majestic rhinoceros right in front of them. Lauren is ecstatic and starts taking photos until she sees something even more unmissable, a baby rhinoceros. Billy is the only one who immediately understands the danger of this, as one should never be between an animal and its young. Jack agrees with him and asks Noah to move the van back a little, but the boy fumbles with the pedals and ends up making the situation worse. The rhinoceros turns its head toward them and starts pawing one of its feet on the ground in a clear pose of attack. Noah becomes even more nervous, and the van completely stalls, to everyone's despair. When the rhinoceros charges, the vehicle is hit squarely and pushed several meters. Jack struggles to switch places with Noah and goes back to the wheel as soon as the beast releases the van. He tries to reassure the family, saying the attack is over and the worst has passed, but everyone sees that it is not quite like that, as the rhinoceros only went around to gain more momentum. This time, the hit comes from the side, and the horn pierces the bodywork, injuring Jack. The rhinoceros lifts the van, causing the vehicle to tip over and creating a massive wreck. When they confirm that the beast has truly left, Lauren begins to tend to everyone's wounds. Zoe is crying a lot because she hit her head and dislocated her shoulder, but the one who got the worst of it was Jack's leg. After Lauren finishes the first aid, the family gathers to try to flip the van and soon gives up, seeing that the weight is too much for them. Billy fashions a makeshift crutch for Jack, who is moving with great difficulty, and Noah notes that there is no cell phone signal there. Lauren starts to get nervous, and Jack gets irritated, demanding gender equality and saying he is no more obliged to save everyone than she is. In the midst of the argument, he states that someone from the park must be on the way, but Zoe reminds him how they got in there. The vehicle was never registered, and for all intents and purposes, no one knows where they are. Noah suggests walking to the exit, and Lauren says that's madness in the midst of so many ferocious animals. Zoe says that the recommendation is always to stay close to the accident site until someone shows up. However, Billy observes that this road is in a prohibited access area, and there is a chance that no one will pass by for a long time. Suddenly, Lauren begins to feel unwell, and Noah goes to look for her medicine, discovering that the insulin vials have broken. The same thing happened with all the water they brought, as Zoe did not allow anyone to use plastic bottles for ecological reasons. Billy doesn't know much about his mother-in-law's disease and asks Zoe why everyone is so frantic. She explains that her mother will go into a coma if she does not get insulin in 8 hours. Their conversation is interrupted by a hyena, and Billy remembers what Lucas said the night before. Seeing that it is just one, he begins to yell and roar at it, throwing handfuls of dirt. Hardly does he turn his back, celebrating victory, and the rest of the pack begins to emerge from behind the bushes. The family runs into the van, where they huddle in fear of the hideous screams, until the hyenas finally decide to leave. As time goes by, it becomes clearer that no one ventures into that side of the park, and Lauren's health is deteriorating. Therefore, Jack decides to walk to a higher location where there may be signal. Noah decides to go in his place, as he thinks it is impossible for him to climb anything with that leg, and Billy offers to accompany the boy. On their way there, the two talk about the family's problems, and Billy confesses his contempt for Jack. Noah acknowledges his father's flaws, but responds that it is very easy to blame everything on the same person. Upon reaching the top of the hill, Noah is disappointed to see that the plan has failed, and the cell phone still has no signal. But not everything is lost, as from there, he sees a structure that can only be some sort of emergency post. Noah is still calculating the distance to it when Billy is attacked by a leopard. Noah's reaction is to run away immediately, but he soon stops, feeling guilty. Grabbing a fallen branch, he summons the courage to climb the hill again to save his friend. However, Billy is no longer there when he returns, and all that is left is a pool of blood. Horrified, Noah reverts to plan A and runs again. Zoe is devastated when he arrives, telling what happened to her boyfriend. While Jack comforts her, we see that Billy is hanging from a tree branch, still alive. He lifts his body with difficulty and sees that the leopard is sleeping just nearby. When Zoe calms down, Jack accompanies her back to the van, and they find it surrounded by 3 hyenas. Jack tells his daughter to stay back, but she doesn't want to pass up this opportunity to vent, and they end up scaring the pack of hyenas with their yelling. Meanwhile, in the tree, Billy tries to move very slowly to avoid waking the leopard, but his frantic breathing is hard to control. The beast eventually wakes up with a growl, and the two stare at each other in a tense moment where Billy hopes it will fall back asleep. Unfortunately, it does the opposite and becomes completely awake, walking along the branch in his direction. When he sees her in a leaping position, Billy prepares for a risky move and lets go of the branch just as she lunges forward. The two crash to the ground, and the leopard ends up leaving. Noah tells the others about the house he saw from the hill and explains roughly where it is. Tired of staying there in fear of the hyenas, they decide to test their luck and walk there. Billy regains consciousness after a while and manages to stand up with great difficulty. Walking slowly and stopping to gather his strength, he manages to retrace his way back to the van and feels very happy, only to find that everyone is gone. Exhausted and frustrated, he curls up in the back seat to rest, trying to hold back tears. Meanwhile, Jack keeps arguing with the children about any decision, always presuming that his opinion is worth more than theirs. Zoe argues that everyone there has the same jungle survival experience, but this is also ignored. The house Noah saw seems never-ending, and one begins to doubt the other's sense of direction. The journey continues until the family comes across something truly horrible. The same rhinoceros that attacked the van is lying next to its calf, and its head is disfigured as the horn was ripped off by illegal hunters. Lauren refuses to leave the defenseless calf behind, but Jack convinces her that they cannot save the animal in their current state. He promises her that as soon as they get help, he will return to rescue the calf. Billy is sleeping soundly when a car stops right behind the van. 2 tourists get out to see what happened and start calling out, asking if anyone is injured, but Billy doesn't have the strength to respond. Fortunately, the couple does not give up and gathers the courage to check the inside of the vehicle, getting a huge scare upon seeing the boy in that state. Zoe begins to get angry with her brother for not having found what they were looking for. Thankfully, they come across a river along the way. He apologizes for not having seen it from the hill and then opens the park map, using this new information to better calculate the route. Lauren needs to rest for a few minutes before continuing, and then they begin planning the crossing of the river. Zoe doesn't want to enter the water, saying there could be crocodiles, but then she remembers that outside the river is also not safe when the pack of hyenas resurfaces. The family hides behind the rocks at the riverbank, trying to fool the predators. The pack of hyenas manages to find them without any difficulty and is about to pounce when the sound of gunshots frightens them away. Jack breathes a sigh of relief upon recognizing Mitch, who is with a large group of armed men. And that's not the only stroke of luck, as the couple of tourists are also arriving at the lodge with Billy, and he explains everything to the authorities, who immediately begin the search. Meanwhile, Mitch welcomes the family to his camp, but that doesn't help much with Lauren's condition, as they don't have any insulin. Jack implores someone to get help before it's too late for her, and Mitch says he will try the satellite phone. At that moment, Zoe looks at one of the bags on the ground and sees a rhinoceros horn still stained with blood. One of the men quickly covers it up and looks at the girl sternly, saying she shouldn't have seen that. Mitch realizes he has been discovered and starts to explain himself, saying he is helping the local population sustain themselves through this trade. Jack swiftly interjects that it is none of his business what others do with their lives, making it clear that he does not intend to report anyone. Zoe interrupts this speech before he embarrasses himself further, clarifying that these guys never had any intention of helping them. Mitch doesn't even bother denying the accusation and orders someone to tie up the guests. The group of hunters intends to leave the next day, and the plan is to let the hyenas eat the meddling family. As Mitch walks away to negotiate the merchandise with clients, Jack apologizes to his 2 children for caring too much about insignificant things throughout his life. He says he is very proud of them precisely because they are the opposite of him. The siblings become emotional with these words, while Jack loosens the rope around their wrists. Without anyone seeing, he unties his children and formulates a plan for escape, asking Zoe to drive the Jeep and Noah to carry Lauren. Jack's role will be as bait, running off to the opposite side without much discretion. The hunters fall into the trap, and all pounce on him at once. As the camp becomes deserted, Noah and Zoe take Lauren to the Jeep. They hear the shot when Jack is hit in the shoulder, and Zoe wants to go back to save him, but Noah doesn't let her stray from the plan. Jack still manages to get up and even keeps walking after the second shot, which leaves Mitch astonished. Zoe struggles to get the Jeep started, trying to ignore the sound of gunfire. When Mitch manages to reach Jack, he thanks him for the experience of hunting a human for the first time, and then gives him the mercy shot that ends his life. With the ensuing silence, Mitch hears the noise of the Jeep, as Zoe still hasn't been able to start it. Lauren opens her eyes for a brief moment and tells her daughter to stop trying for a few seconds. Noah warns that the hunters are coming, but she stays calm and signals to Zoe when it's time to turn the key again. The tactic works well when Mitch is almost upon them. Determined not to leave any witnesses, he orders everyone to chase that Jeep. Noah asks his sister to drive faster, but she can barely see anything, and Mitch manages to catch up with her in just a few minutes. However, Zoe compensates for the slowness with her daring, and instead of stepping harder on the accelerator, she decides to abruptly turn the wheel. Used to more defenseless hostages, Mitch isn't expecting this and loses control of the Jeep, crashing head-on into a fallen tree. After confirming that Charlie is done for, he drags himself out of the car and collapses on the ground, severely injured. It is then that he hears a chilling whimper and realizes he is surrounded by a pack of hungry hyenas. Even he perceives the irony of fate and bursts into laughter, knowing that this is his end. Zoe lets out a scream of joy upon seeing that they have reached a road, but then sees that more bandits are coming down it and quickly turns around. She turns off the headlights and crouches down, hugging her brother and trembling with fear. The hunters park a few meters away and get out of the car armed, walking toward the Jeep. It is then that another vehicle appears, well lit and also full of armed people, but all women. It is the Lioness Squad, which arrives shooting many bullets and thus eliminates all the bandits. Billy is with them, and Zoe runs to hug him, very happy to see her boyfriend again. Lauren is finally treated and manages to save herself, but she cries a lot upon learning of Jack's death. She, her children, and Billy return to the park as soon as they recover and make a donation in Jack's honor, helping to create a safe space for orphaned rhinoceroses.